So there's an old saying, don't count your chickens before they hatch. And when it comes to politics, that's especially true. The conventional wisdom has been that there's a red wave coming in November. But some of the results on Tuesday night gave Republicans some cause for pause. And Democrats found some new optimism. Back in May, the Cook Political Report was expecting the GOP to gain 20 to 35 House seats this fall. But editor Dave Wasserman now says they've revised their outlook to a Republican gain of just 10 to 20 seats, with Democrats maintaining control being not out of the question. One of the races that's making people rethink how things could play out in November was the special election in New York's 19th congressional district. Democrat Pat Ryan made abortion rights, gun reform, and voting rights cornerstones of his campaign. Republican Mark Molinaro instead focused on bashing President Biden, inflation, and crime. In the end, Pat Ryan won by about 2 points and is now headed to Congress. As Punchbowl News points out, no poll ever showed Ryan leading, not even the one released by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. A survey published by a progressive group right before the election even had Molinaro up by 8 points. And as Mattoblog writes, this particular district is, quote, widely seen as one of the nation's most reliable bellwethers. It is, after all, a district that supported George W. Bush, then Barack Obama, then Donald Trump, and then Joe Biden. Meanwhile, here in Florida, Democratic voters chose Charlie Crist to go up against Republican Governor Ron DeSantis this fall. Democratic Congresswoman Val Demings won her primary and will now challenge Republican Senator Marco Rubio. Rebecca Jones, a former State Department of Health employee who gained notoriety after challenging Florida's COVID data reporting, will run against Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. And we cannot forget 25-year-old Maxwell Frost, a former March for Our Lives organizer who won his Democratic primary this week. He could become the first Gen Z member of Congress if he's elected this fall. Joining me now here on set is Florida State Senator Shevrin Jones. He also won his primary this week, and because he's not being challenged in the fall, luckily for us Floridians, that means he's headed back to Tallahassee to do the good work that he does. Shevrin, thanks for being here, Senator. It is always an honor to have you here. You know, I wanted to ask you straight out of the gate, do you think that these Democratic victories in this latest round of primaries, is that heralding something that Democrats should hold on to as being hopeful for November?
I think, well, first, thank you for having me. And I think the answer is yes. I think the wave that we've seen of Democrats who have won across the country, and particularly here in Florida, I think it's a message that the Democrats should move with. They should amplify, and they should make it hit the households of people so they can know that these are the individuals who believe in your values. We know how bad Ron DeSantis is. But instead of harping on that issue, let's talk about the kitchen table issues. Bring those issues back to the homes of the people. And that's why you're seeing the candidates winning at marginal numbers that they're winning at, because they're bringing those issues to people's households.
So there's that saying, imitation is the highest form of flattery.
Sure.
Why not have Democrats in Florida, for example, cherry pick some of the winning strategies that we're seeing across the United States? Pat Ryan, for example, the one that we highlighted in the intro to your segment, he made abortion kind of the cornerstone of what was happening with his campaign. Do you think Florida Democrats are prepared to be one-issue voters? Do you think it's enough to galvanize them to go to the polls in November and say, I care enough about this one issue, for example, abortion, to go and vote?
Well, I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both and type of ordeal. What I believe is, I think that what Pat Ryan did in New York, I think it's smart.
Yeah.
I think it's also very brilliant that they were able to do that. But you look at New York and you look at Florida, the issues and the people in these states, in our state, is different. And so I believe that putting an array of issues out on the table so that people can know, well, not only do they support me here, but they also support my neighbor here. And so I think by doing that, you create a message. And if you really want to be a big tent party, that is a big tent message that you can get out.
Yeah, but before I kind of shift a little bit to something a little bit bigger than Florida, though, Florida is such a unique place.
Yeah.
And we always joke about it being the epicenter of all things crazy. But part of that is because DeSantis has rolled out this very anti-civil rights, LGBTQ+, anti the independence to be able to choose how we want to live our lives free of, interference from the government. Is that enough to be able to go for voters and say the Democratic Party is going to give you that protection from something as authoritarian as Ron DeSantis?
Well, I think Ron DeSantis is a part of the problem. I think what he has spewed across the state and nationally is also a part of the problem. But I believe when you go into certain communities, even when we were knocking on doors, although they recognize those issues, the things that those people actually were talking about were things that hit their pocketbook. And that is the rent crisis that we're dealing with in Florida. That also includes the property insurance crisis that we're dealing with in Florida. They recognize what Ron DeSantis is doing. But is that what they're harping on? It's just not. Because many of their pocketbooks have been hit so hard over the last year and 2 years here in Florida. That's the message that we have to bring to people is that, listen, we want to put money back into your pocketbook. We want to bring values back into your household. We want to make sure that your children are protected in every sense of the word. And that's why I said that it's a both and taking the message from New York, taking the strategies that have worked in other areas and bringing those issues to Florida so people can know that, you know what, this truly is the party that's for me. Whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or NPA, this is the party that will get us back to some normalcy.
So we mentioned also Maxwell Frost, for example, in the intro, yes. Gen Z. Yes. You are blissfully much younger than me, Senator Jones. But do you think, though, that there is a little bit of a tension between the more establishment Democrats, for example, and the more progressive younger Gen Z candidates? I mean, do you think that is there a tension? And B, is there a way to reconcile that tension if one exists?
Well, I think you look at a race like Maxwell Frost, that should be a sign that Florida is changing. The political structure of Florida is changing also. Young people, the Gen Zers, they will be the largest voting bloc that we have in this country in the next few years. Frost is leading that charge, especially here in Florida. What has to happen, I think, is that we have to make sure, the Democrats, that we're not ostracizing individuals who think differently. We cannot get into these situations to where we are now fussing and fighting based off of beliefs and values, and we call ourselves a big tent party. Yes, we must reconcile. Yes, we must come to the table to figure out what are those issues that hit home and then move on those issues. No infighting.
Yeah, because the Democratic Party has always been the big tent party.
Absolutely.
And there's always supposed to have been space for everybody. I believe that somebody like Val Demings, for example, won her primary. I think she has a really darn good chance against Marco Rubio. She's fantastic in and of her own right, but Marco Rubio doesn't show up, doesn't deliver, isn't what he's supposed to be doing. There is some sound I want to play very quickly for you. This is a plea from Senator Marco Rubio as he was talking about his opponent, Val Demings. Take a quick listen. I'll ask you a question on the other side.
She's raising all these small dollar donors on Act Blue, and God knows where the money's coming from all over the country. I need people to help me, but she's raising all this money from all these ultra liberals who want to ruin Florida, by the way. So I do ask people to go on my website, marcorubio.com, and please give, because we are being outraised by these far left Marxists.
Oh, putting aside he's on Fox News making that pitch, he sounds scared, in my opinion. Do you really think there's enough of a difference to be made between now and November in terms of spend?
Absolutely. I think what we just saw is that desperation cry right now. I think it also shows that those small dollar donations, that's exactly what happened with Barack Obama. Those people who can have the $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 checks, they say, you know what, take my $5 and how can I support? And how can I walk? How can I make calls for you? That's what Val Demings is doing. That's what I believe the message has to be. When people can say, you know what, I know I don't make a lot, but yet and still I can reach in my pocket to help you as much as I can or as little as I can, but yet and still I can put my hand to the plow in another area. I think that's what shows the movement. Val Demings have it. I think Charlie Crist can have it, and we can run that up and down the state of Florida from Tallahassee to Key West to show that we have the movement and the momentum to get to where we need to go in November.
I think if there was never a time that there was an importance placed on how critical a race like the governor's race is, for example, the Chris DeSantis race, Ron DeSantis on his own just gerrymandered and redistricted and did it so that he could take away from some of the Democrats being able to put their people in office and to have the people in those jurisdictions represented by the people that they wanted the most. Do you think that redistricting done in such a way to create racial disparities as well, Do you think that really, though, is just too much for the Democrats to overcome in Florida in November?
Well, it's too much to overcome because of how it's structured.
Exactly.
Because of the Supreme Court is not in our favor. So even if we take it to the Supreme Court, we lose. Or even if we take it to the National Supreme Court, the courts are also stacked against us. The one thing that the power that the Democrats do have here in Florida is to continue calling out the disenfranchisement of marginalized communities and to let that resonate in households and communities of people. We see that. We saw that with the initiatives that have started all across the state, like Stop the Woke Act. Stay Woke, Go Vote Act that we've done across the state, where Black elected officials got together and have gone back into their communities to make it clear that this is what they are trying to do. This is how they're trying to silence your voices. What are you going to do about it? And that's what we see, this uproar and upcry that's coming out of Black communities, that's coming out of other marginalized communities, to make it clear that we will not sit back and allow this. And the question now becomes, what type of Florida do you want your children to be raised in? And that's the question that everyone's going to have to answer.
And as the mom of a 7-year-old who's in public school, as a Democrat, as a minority, as a woman, it's definitely something that I care about a lot, which is why I'm grateful for you, Florida State Senator Shevrin Jones, for taking the time to join me on set today. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you.